start with like, an, just let me just check if we're live. Second.
We seem to be.
Yeah. So hey guys, we are finally live, and today we are talking with Abhinav, aka Abnox, and today we are going to be talking about NFTs and like how it's a new internet economy. Uh, just a second. My stream also started playing headphone service double audio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be
Mm.
talking about NFTs, the mental models behind it, why do even people buy NFTs, and all of that stuff. So let's start with it. Anything you want to say? Start.
And so thank you for having me here. What I'm also going to do is let me quickly share this on my Twitter so more people come in, and I'll also share it on Discord. But yeah, bro, excited about today's conversation.
Same. Been looking forward to this for a while now.
Yeah, me too.
So let's get right into it. So
Yeah.
how would you define NFTs from your perspective? Because for me, like as a developer, I just see them as tokens on the an asset class on the blockchain that I can
Yeah.
leverage to create different products or basically stuff like that. And like, how can I leverage them to create new things? But I'm sure like
Hmm.
you're looking at them from a different perspective, from a creator's perspective. So how would you define them?
So let me talk about why I'm seeing it differently as well. Because to everybody who's watching, the Google answer that you get is going to be NFTs are non-fungible tokens.
Yeah.
And then most of the times they will get into an explanation of how that works, about digital scarcity, about how it connects to the blockchain, how, what gas fees are, and all of that stuff. And all that stuff is really important, the technical aspects of it. That's how it actually works. But when I look at myself, I am someone who has always lived in a higher level of abstraction. And I don't mean that in some fancy way. The very simple way to explain it is when I was in computer science, I realized it wasn't for me. But the main reason for that was I realized that I wasn't interested in the hardware stack. Right? I tried some shit with Arduino and I was like, no, bro, I don't want to do this. Then I did experiment with the software stack once they started doing stuff. First year, second year, I was like, dude, I don't really want to code. This is interesting, but I wanna build something cool that people can use. And it seemed too far away to reach that point. So I wasn't really into the back end stuff, tried front end stuff, wasn't into it either. And when it really clicked for me was when I got into design. Because the way I
Right.
see it is you have these layers, right, of
Hmm.
abstraction. And the level I'm operating at is the one where humans interact with it. So for example, when you have your smartphone, there's
Yeah.
layers of technologies in it with people working at different levels of the stack.
Right.
So as designers, we work on one of the higher levels of the stack, which is the level at which people actually interact with the technology. And here, the kind of questions, the kind of concepts get very different, because here you now start, like, people also have no clue about what the whole thing is. So the way they think about it is the way the software is talking to them. Like, this is what I see and this is what I understand. This is how I feel, and then this is how I try to get my stuff done. So let's talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about how I see it. But before that, I just want to welcome everyone in the chat. What we'll also be doing today is we're going to be highlighting some comments on the screen. So if you have questions, you can just post them. We'll highlight. Mohan, you want to highlight a few?
Yep.
Let's.
So as always, like there's appreciation for your setup because it's super awesome.
I want to highlight the Justin Bieber vibes.
That's the one I was going for next.
Yeah.
That's spot on.
Yeah. See a
And
lot of
then
one
there's
one one
crypto
ones.
subs.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let's get started.
Sweet. Cool, man. So the way I'm seeing NFTs right now is it is it is something that is fundamentally different from what has existed before. Right? Let me start at that. Which is, people might see NFTs and they might be like, um, isn't this the same as crypto? No, it's slightly different. Isn't this the same as downloading a JPEG? I'll screenshot it. No, it's slightly different. So
That's
it
the
is
most
a
common
shift.
argument against it.
Very common, bro. But it is a shift, right? And the shift is that, I don't know how deep we want to go right now itself, but with NFTs, we have an opportunity to build some new systems in the world. Let me just say that to start with, which is, so far, the creative output of any person, like for example, you are working on some projects, you have a certain amount of creative output, even as a developer. As a
Right.
developer, as a marketer, as a copywriter, as a designer, as a community person, as a person who manages the Discord, all of the people who are working on creating something, we have a creative output. The way I'm seeing it is NFTs give us a way to take that creative output and directly get it to people and do it in a way that you monetize from day one. Most side projects, people are scared to monetize. With NFTs, it's almost like monetization is built in from the day one itself.
Right.
Right? So NFTs for creators can be a new way to monetize. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because over here, monetization is like a built in feature right from the get go.
Yes. And I've done so many side projects that have died. Right? They don't exist today. And I'm not saying they wouldn't die if NFTs existed, but if the concept existed, maybe I would think about monetization earlier. I think the mindset we all have coming from the last few years is that build something, make it, give it for free, get users, and then figure out monetization, which has
Right.
worked great for some categories of apps. So consumer social, that's great, right? If you're building something like a clubhouse, you don't want to monetize because right now you want people to build that habit.
Right.
But let's say you're doing SaaS, it's not a great idea.
So
You
the
want to
thing
try to
with
monetize.
like the core difference with that is the apps
Yeah.
that need a network effect, like
Hmm.
it's more better for you to get users right away and then
True.
monetize. The apps that don't need that a lot of network effect, like just to function,
Yeah.
their monetization from the get-go is a great idea. But with
Hmm.
blockchain, network effects is the core thing because almost everything is open source. Anybody could fork your code. People have literally forked UIs and started a new project with the same UI and the
Hmm.
same contracts and not even change the name in the contracts. So at that
True.
time, network effects become a really important factor for your project to survive. And if you combine
Hmm.
network effects with monetization from day one, then it's a killer combination.
True, bro. I love that distinction. Network effect is probably the name of the game. And I think it's, yes, network effects are built in from the scratch, but what it looks like, right? For people watching, you might not, you should definitely look into what network effects are. But if you don't get network effects, like if you don't get the concept of it, you will still feel the network effects. That's something about network effects that still surprises me. I don't know the full reasons, but in the same way that we can see stuff and we can hear stuff, we can feel network effects, right? Sometimes it feels like FOMO. Sometimes
Right.
it feels like community. Sometimes it feels like, something else. So that way, the fact that most crypto projects are very community driven is also not an accident. It's just because network effects are built in. So the community sort of map onto those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a built-in feature because incentives are extremely aligned. Like if you're starting a
Hmm.
project and you're holding in the initial tokens, you want people to use more of those tokens and you want them
True.
to get higher in circulation. And the only way to do that is have a community around it.
Hmm. True.
Right. So there was one important point that you mentioned that a lot of people just say, if I can just screenshot the for like picture the NFT, then what's the value in it? So what do you
Yeah.
say to that? Like, how do you tell people that it's the sign on the blockchain that your wallet has signed? That's
Yeah.
what holds the value and not the actual metadata.
Hmm. So I would say the one way to think about it is, like, I'll give you one example. I saw this tweet about how somebody was like, bro, I mean, I said this in Prakhar's interview also. somebody was like, bro, like, why did Facebook buy WhatsApp for 19 billion? मैंने तो WhatsApp को प्ले स्टोर में जाके डाउनलोड कर दिया, मुझे तो फ्री में मिल गया, right?
Right.
But what WhatsApp is buying is not just being a user on WhatsApp, right? What Facebook is buying, sorry. They're not just buying WhatsApp so they can use it as a user. They're buying the asset WhatsApp, which includes the WhatsApp team, the source code of WhatsApp. It includes all the network effects that WhatsApp has built. They're literally buying the entire network, right? You and I, we have WhatsApp groups where our parents are sharing WhatsApp messages. They're sharing, good morning messages. That is a part of the WhatsApp asset, right? That those networks exist, and WhatsApp has built those networks
Right.
over time. So when Facebook buys it for 19 billion, what they're saying is not that. What they're saying is that the asset itself, all of these things together, is worth 19 billion. So when we think about NFTs, the thing is, dude, all of us on this call, we're never going to buy Facebook, right? We're not going to acquire a company, very likely. Maybe some of us will, but we're not going to acquire a company, right? Because acquiring a company is like it's a heavy thing to do. You need to be a corporation to acquire a corporation, right? As an individual, you can't just be like, bro, let me acquire fucking WhatsApp. But with NFTs, so the key thing there is ownership. Ownership as owner of the asset, and then there is consumption of the asset. So using WhatsApp versus
Right.
owning WhatsApp is very different. I think we understand that. With NFTs, it's almost like that same idea of owning an asset is now made very easy. So you don't need to be a corporation to be able to buy this thing. You can just buy, right now it's artwork, right? So you can buy artwork. But what you're still doing is you're buying an asset. You're buying the output of creative work
I
that
think
might
I
have been done
lost you
by
for a
one.
second.
Yeah, sure. Let me repeat. So the similarity
Just
between,
a second.
sure,
Yeah, I think it's stable now because I lost you for a second
okay,
right over there.
cool, cool.
Yeah, carry
The
on.
similarity between buying WhatsApp as an asset, Facebook doing that, and buying a piece of artwork on the NFT is that both of these, one is 19 billion, other might be zero point 0.1 ETH, but both of these are the output of creative work. On the WhatsApp side, it's their team, it's their community, it's all of the stuff they've done. On the artwork side, it might be one artist, it might be, for example, Rahul, a friend of mine. He recently minted this
Yeah.
piece where he worked with a sound designer, and that sound designer works, amazing guy. He works on movies. So their creative output, them making this piece together, I can now buy ownership of it. So not as a consumer, but actually as an owner. So yeah.
Yeah, that's like an interesting way to look at it. Like if you're just screenshotting the image of it, it's just you're consuming the art piece. But if you're buying the NFT, you're the owner and you can do whatever you want to with it. Like you can resell it for a profit maybe. So
Yes, you
that's
can.
something that people very easily, very conveniently leave out of this debate. And also
Mm.
when they give this uh, um, reason of why is it valuable if I can just screenshot it. They're just thinking about crypto art when NFTs way more than that. Crypto art is probably the most nascent application of it.
Yes. And I'll talk about one more.
So
I can touch upon one of those.
I want to just answer this. Yeah,
Let's do
I
it.
want to answer this comment once if it
Sure.
shows up. For some reason
Yeah, I
my
can see it.
stream is lagging today.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is on the screen.
So
You can go for it.
currently with NFT using Ethereum as blockchain platform seems very unsustainable. What are your views on NFT being used on different blockchain platforms? So almost all the smart contract platforms support NFTs. It's just that network effects are very strong in Ethereum right now, but it's starting to pick up on other chains as well. Like there are a couple of new marketplaces on Tezos, and in one of them there have been like more than 8,000 pieces minted within 3 weeks. So it's definitely picking up steam on other chains as well. And like with Ethereum, it's a $50-$60 fee to mint an NFT. On Tezos, it's under $1. So like if I also had to go for it, I would like, I don't have that kind of capital to put into minting one NFT. So I would probably do on that because it's like if you think about environmental factors as well, Ethereum right now is on proof of work, which is the algorithm through which they add transactions to simplify it, and that is very power consuming, and that is not sustainable for the environment, and that's why they're shifting to a proof of stake based approach, which is a different kind of algorithm that is used by the miners or the validators to add transactions to the blockchain. And Tezos since day one has been on proof of stake, so they've perfected that system over there.
Yeah.
So
And
like
I'll also add
it's
that.
not just Tezos. I know more about Tezos, so I gave that example. But there are other proof of stake based chains as well.
And I'll also add that, the fact that multiple blockchains are doing it is a good thing, because in the end, more competition means the products themselves improve. And in the end, the best product will
Yeah,
win. Whoever figures it out best will win. So that way, it's still a very open industry. Yeah.
right. And
You want to answer a few
like
more questions, or do you want to go deeper?
sure, let's answer questions because like let's get these done with at least before we move on to
Yeah.
deeper
The
topics.
foundation.
Yeah. So you got to answer this one first.
Yeah. The thing is, I'll tell you this, I never start any project without doing a prototype of the project first. Right. So currently
Okay.
I'm in the prototype stage. So once I figure it out, I will do it. Yeah.
So you're looking towards it. You're planning to launch a token, personal
I
token.
won't say I'm planning to launch a token, but I'll say it's on my mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
And some people say NFTs are profitable, are not profitable. The ROI is not high.
Yeah.
Do you want to take
The
this
thing
one?
is, it's agree. I totally agree with you, Amog, in the sense that every asset class has winners and losers, right? Gold might be profitable for you, right? If you're investing in gold. Similarly, on the stock market, you might invest in ITC, but you might also invest in, let's say, Tata Steel or some other stock. And out of all these stocks, some will do well and some won't. So rather than NFTs being profitable, it's the individual asset. Some will win, some will tank, some will tank now and come up later. But then that's the nature of the game.
Right. So I'm moving on to the next question. I still
Perfect. I
don't get
love this
it.
question.
Why would someone
Yeah.
buy it instead of money tokens? So take
So
your shot at it.
Pragya, the answer to this is that you might not see it now, but over the next couple of weeks, months, years, you will start noticing it, right? Not just Pragya, anybody here who's like, why would you buy this, right? The thing is, right now you might have limited money. Let's talk purely from a money point first. You might have limited money and you're like, I would rather invest this in mutual funds. And if you're saying that, bro, you're right. You're 100% right, right? NFTs, crypto, they're speculative asset classes. So if you're starting out on your investment journey, you probably want to stick with the true and tested ones first. You want to do your mutual funds so that you can get your tax saving there. You want to do your PPF and all that stuff. But the way to think about NFTs is eventually you get to a point where your money is sitting in the bank and you would rather deploy this towards an asset rather than letting it sit in the bank. But other than the money perspective, let me put this in another way. Naval's quote, one of his quotes, is that you're never going to get rich selling your time. You need to own an asset. That sounds cool, but what does it mean? It means in a week, if you have 40 hours to work, you're going to be paid for 40 hours. You will not be paid for 4,000 hours. Why? Because you don't have 4,000 hours in a week. So you don't get paid. Right? So that 40 hours per week is not changing. There might be a week where you reach 60, but it'll never reach 6,000. Right? Because time is the most limited thing all of us have. So the point is how instead of being paid for my time, which is, if you go for a job, What they're doing is they're buying bundles of your time. So instead of paying you like per hour, they're saying we're going to buy, let's say 40 a week, so 160 hours a month, and we're going to buy it for a long-term contract. Stay for a year, stay for 2 years, and we figure out how long you want to stay. They're buying your time. And now, as a company, think about what has happened. As a company, if I have 2 employees in a week spending 40 hours, that company as an entity has 80 hours of time that they can now deploy towards whatever they want, right? So time is the valuable asset. So the reason you would buy NFTs or any investment is you are taking this time and you're trying to create assets that you own, right? An asset might just be gold that you buy, but it might just be NFTs. Or another asset is technically your Twitter account. If you've been consistently tweeting for the last 3 years, forget the followers, even if you have, a few hundred. The point is you have a reputation now, right? That's an
Right.
asset that you've built up over time. You spent your time into this, spend your time curating, creating, polishing this asset. And now this asset can get you jobs, which can get you more money. So the way I want you to think about it is time versus assets. You want to somehow figure out how to get more assets, but right now you might have an abundance of time.
Right. That's a great answer. And like like this question, thing that I say is like, oh, why do people like buy Rolexes or anything that's a status flex? Like, why do you need a BMW when you can be good with a Honda, right? So at some level, it also becomes a status flex when you have an abundance of wealth.
Yes.
And I
You
think
know,
that, yeah, go ahead.
one very interesting thread I came across yesterday. I think I retweeted this on Abnux too, the Twitter account. Somebody was like, bro, what's actually happening is that it's a shifting of the old guard in some ways, right? As we, the younger generation, as we are getting older, right, there's a shift that's happening, which
Right.
is in the workplace, it's going to be more of us rather than more of people from 10 years ago. I have nothing against them, by the way. A lot of my friends, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying the shift that's happening is younger people keep entering the workforce every year. And when this happens, things start shifting. Now, you and I, Manan, what is our relationship with gold? Have you ever owned gold?
Non-existent.
Non-existent, right? I got this because, when I got engaged, I was like, let's buy a gold ring. This was probably the first time I bought gold. But what is our relationship with, let's say, digital assets? What's our relationship with a Twitter verified blue check? We look at it as
It's
a
much more valuable to us, right?
much more valuable, right? What would you rather have, gold or a blue check? A lot of people would pick a blue check. Our
Yeah.
generation would pick a blue check. Our parents' generation would pick the gold.
Yeah.
So as the shift happens, younger people enter the workforce, and I don't want to say just workforce. As young people start doing more projects, more and more of the economy becomes things that we are interested in rather than what people before us were interested in. So we don't think gold is valuable. If we place more value on, let's say, Fortnite skins, which is a digital asset, or let's say buying NFT art, or buying, or the blue check on Instagram or Twitter, right? That's an asset you can't buy with time. I mean, you can't buy with money. You have to spend time to get there.
Yeah.
As that happens, new classes are created. And these asset classes, why do they exist? Is because we think they're valuable. Yeah.
That makes sense. So, the topic that I wanted to move on to was, what do you think is one of the like anti-mental models sort of that like stops people from actually grasping what NFTs are and like why are they valuable? Like, what do you think is the biggest hurdle for them?
Got it. Bro, that's a great question. I love the term anti-mental models. Um, the biggest hurdle is thinking of NFTs only from a money perspective. And it's not wrong if you think this way. It's just that that's just one way of looking at it. So I'll give you an example. when crypto came out, or when crypto was a thing, let's say in 2011, 2013, it was just a money thing, right? People were like, yes, you can have certain utility with crypto, but it was mostly a, okay, let's buy this so I can sell it later. And money, the price goes up and down and I can trade, maybe make some money. But then the sentiment was still hold on to this because we don't know yet.
Yeah.
What we see today is not the thing that is going to be later. And it proved true. The hodl meme was a powerful one, and it was true. If you had held back then, back when it was $100, dude, I was in college, in my hostel, not hostel. I think we had moved to an apartment by this time. We have semester exams going, final and some exams. We are sitting in our rooms, and we are like, bro, Bitcoin, right? We first heard about it, and literally the week before when we were talking about it, Bitcoin was $100, and this week it had reached $600, and we were like,
Right.
yo, why didn't we put money? So we put money. We put some money at 800. I'll tell you mine. Everybody entered at different points. But literally, dude, NSEMs are going on. We're not studying. We're like, bro, Bitcoin is amazing. What the fuck is it? And it was money. So at its peak back then, it reached $1,000. And we were like, fuck, from 100 to 1,000 in a week or 1.5 weeks. And dude, that was the peak. And we bought at 1,000. But then for the next 2 years, it fell back to 100. And we felt like shit. Most of my friends back then, they sold because they were like, dude, I can't tolerate these losses. And I'm not going to say I held all of it. I sold, used a bunch of it as well. But what I'm trying to say is, today when you look at NFTs, you're again thinking from the money perspective, because this might be your first experience with crypto. Maybe you weren't into this stuff back in 2011, but now you are. But you're having the exact same moment that I did, and I'm having the same moment again. Which is, you are like, yo, like, a lot of people are making a lot of money. I want to figure this out. But the thing is, the money is just one side of it. The other side of this, which didn't exist, maybe existed before, but it's becoming more obvious now, is this decentralization is started with applying to money, but will come into every single sphere. We're building a new internet. So in the same way that collectors back in the day, like our previous generation, if they had to buy art, they would go to an art house, they would go to an auction or a gallery, and they would buy it. Today, bro, we don't have the time to go to galleries. Let's be
Right.
honest. I'm never going to step into a gallery. I would rather just be online watching a YouTube video. I'm not going to walk into a gallery, even if it's next to my house. Right? So it's almost like all this stuff is being reinvented for us. We are reinventing it. So money is one part of it. Assets, creative work being monetized is another part of it. And with things, and DeFi, for example, with DeFi, you're like, let's take parts of the current economy, right? For example, you've got one small niche thing that does this. We're like, let's recreate this whole thing, but with crypto. So DeFi projects then are taking on that in small pieces. They're eating it up. Similarly, with DAOs, decentralized autonomous organization, what you're doing is, today you would register a company with the MCA, which is the Indian registrar or whatever, or you register in Delaware in the US or in Singapore.
Yeah.
Now you just register it on the internet. With DAOs, every person that is a part of this, a part of the team, owns that token of that company, and it's now in your interest to grow it. It's almost like equity.
Right.
Right? So it's almost like, today you might be thinking from a money angle, but keep your eyes open, because the use cases don't exist completely today. A lot of use cases are literally being invented right now.
Like it's at a very nascent stage right now. As I said, like crypto art is the most primitive use case of it. There's a whole lot more that's going on.
Yeah.
Like let's dive into that. Like I'll highlight this comment, and I definitely agree with this one. Art NFT feels like V 0.1 use case, and this is super true. So
100%.
what do you think? Like you might have come across a few use cases during like your venture into NFTs.
Yeah.
So is there anyone that is currently being built that you found interesting?
I mean, DAOs are the most interesting one to me, right? I'll give you one example of this. I made a tweet today saying, okay, some context. I run this site called booklets.io,
Yep.
right? It's a side project that I don't focus any time on. I built it with Mayank about December 2019, Jan 2020, roughly. So it's been about a year. And dude, it's not even in my Twitter bio. It's not even on my LinkedIn. Like, it's a project that I did, but now it's not, we don't focus on it. Somebody sent me an email saying, hey, you interested in selling this? So the tweet I made anyway was, should I keep it or should I sell it? Now, that's the model that exists today, which is I can make something. Mayank, he helped me with making booklets. But today, to monetize it, I run ads on it. And it makes peanuts, bro. It makes $10 a month, $5 a month sometimes. Right? Because that's the current model. Our current model of what a side project looks like, or what a project looks like, is you make this website, grow the traffic, do it for free, collect the email, do a newsletter, people come back, start doing this, do affiliate with monetization, try selling a product. And that's the model that exists today. Everybody is doing some version of this.
Right.
But in the future, what if, with DAOs, or in general, it's a similar thing. DAOs are basically, the simple way to describe it, DAO is, NFTs are to artwork what DAO is to companies and projects, right? A more better technical explanation, you will be able to find it online. But it's almost like, let's say I started a side project like Booklets, but as a DAO instead. So it's like Mayank and I own a fractional percentage of this, and there's a Booklets token. You, Manan, as the first 100 users, let's say, are taking a bet on this project. You're like, dude, this is quite cool. I'm going to share it on my Twitter because I like the project.
Right.
As the first 100 users, what if you just got some Booklets tokens? You got a token, and this token is, it just represents that you were one of the first 1,000 people to join, let's say. And every person that joins Booklets gets some more tokens, but the amount changes as it gets bigger. So as the first 100 users, you might get 10,000 tokens just for joining. The next 100 only get 5,000.
So it's
So I
like
can
a
set all
curve
this up.
like this.
Yeah. I can set this up in the smart contract. Now, when you share it on Twitter, saying, yo, Booklets is a cool site. I shouldn't talk about Booklets. I'm not even trying to promote it. I might just shut it down at some point. But now that you tweet about it and you bring, more people to the site, if they find it useful, they will sign up as well. And your token value increases. So it's almost like, just by being a user, you now own equity in the company. That's mind-blowing, bro. That's mind-blowing.
This is what I meant by like crypto and blockchain aligns incentives like never before. Like
Yes.
you started something and then your users are like aiming for the same thing. Even if they're holding the booklets token, they want the value to like get higher, and that's what you want as
Yeah.
well to
Yeah.
monetize it. So
And,
it is a very positive sum game, which was not possible before because you were invading the user with advertisements.
true. I'll give you one example also, right? A lot of us here, we love YouTube. Love YouTube. We're here on YouTube right now. I
Yeah.
spend a few hours on YouTube every week,
Same.
right? Bro, in a year, how many hours do we dedicate to YouTube? It's a lot. Each person here. However, YouTube, as it grows, who makes the money? It's firstly people who invested in YouTube very early. It's the founders of YouTube. Then Google acquired YouTube. So I'm hearing some disturbance. Anyways, so Google acquired YouTube, right? Now the YouTube team is working on it, and everybody who holds Google stock technically gets the stock value increases as more people use YouTube,
Right.
right? So today on the public exchange, you can go buy Google stock. So technically, if you're using YouTube a lot, if you buy Google stock, it's almost like you're saying, I'm going to own a piece of this product that I use. But bro, only Google can do that. I can't do that with, let's say, 10K designers yet, unless I IPO. I can't do that with, let's say, a small project that I don't plan on taking to $1 billion company, a small project that I'm doing for fun. I can't do that with that, right? So imagine as you watch YouTube, you could own more of YouTube. You could own a fractional piece. And you investing your time early in YouTube means you're growing YouTube and you're getting some of that money back. That's a mind blowing idea. And in the future, very likely that every project has this. So when you sign up for my product, I might give you some tokens, and that tokens I might not give it for free. You might have to earn it through, you know, certain activities. But now you're an asset, you're a holder. So it's almost like the same centralization, decentralization thing. It's applying to a lot of things. So it's applying to equity, it's applying to corporations, it's applying to art, the art world, collectors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like right now as well, there's so much being built with NFTs that people don't know of. Like there are a whole lot of games that are more than just collectibles. So have you heard of F1 Delta Time?
No.
So they give you F1, you can like earn or like buy F1 cars as tokens, which you
Yeah.
can use in the game. And like they have the IP rights, so they have F1 cars, proper F1 cars with the branding and shit, because that is
Okay.
valuable to the people who are into that world. And
Mm.
like when you're not using a car, you can rent it out to other players and earn rev tokens on that. And rev tokens are
Wow.
listed on the coin exchange.
Okay.
So you can
Damn,
like
that's really
literally
good.
earn real money through that. And then
Yeah.
there's this game called Axie Infinity. And the other
Mm.
other day I saw the tweet that a guy bought real world land in Philippines just by his earnings through playing Axie Infinity.
Wow. That's awesome. Dude,
And yeah,
that's killer. Yeah.
And then there's the intersection of DeFi and NFTs. So Aave is a lending protocol on Ethereum,
Mm.
and now they came out with something called Aave Gotchi. So you remember
Mm.
Tamagotchis from 1990s
Yeah.
or early 2000s. So what they
Mm.
do is every time you lend, like I don't know the exact specifics of it, but they give you an NFT called an Aave Gotchi, and it has certain attributes like a headband or a color or rarity and stuff like that, and that is
Mm.
what represents your participation in the mechanism, and then you can cash it in to reward back you,
Mm.
and you can play with those Avigotchis as well. They built a small game around it.
Nice. Nice. Bro, I'll give you another example. Yesterday, Twitter was filled with cricket, right? I don't personally watch cricket, but it was filled with cricket, right? In the sense that our, you know, we love cricket as Indians, but think about how much energy and motive, how invested we are,
Right.
right? Our, like, not just at a national level, which is India, of course, dude. I totally support Team India. I watch some of the important matches, but think about IPL, for example. Right? We're invested in Royal Challengers Bangalore. Why? Because I'm from Bangalore. I don't care about Mumbai Indians. Why? Because, dude, I don't care about Mumbai. Right? So we already have that feeling of um, ownership in some way. We think that it's our team. Imagine you could actually own a part of RCB,
You
really
know,
own it.
that's legit an idea that I've been obsessing over for the past 2 months.
Is it okay?
It has been blowing my mind that why can't we build this, dude? Like, imagine a stock exchange of IPL teams.
Bro, so that'll change the game, because imagine, so now today, for example, my friends are like, bro, like we bid on this person for RCB, we lost this. A lot of them are early adopters of RCB. They stuck through despite the fact that RCB didn't perform.
Yep.
But imagine for sticking through, and eventually when RCB wins, your token value goes up. And at this point, you can liquidate, you can sell some of it, and all this energy that you spent, dude, now suddenly it's liquid. It's money that you make for supporting a team. Dude, that'd be killer. That'd be insane.
And that same thing can be applied to so many different domains.
And
I
that's
know,
betting technically. I mean, I'm just
yeah,
describing betting.
it is technically betting, but when you change the narrative, it becomes a totally different thing with the same mechanism.
True. Betting doesn't have ownership.
Yeah,
It's speculation on something that you will not own. Yes.
right. And yeah, and like this could be done for so many things that I know of a company that's building like stock exchange for esports teams.
Mm. That's a
So
good one. Yeah.
so there are a lot of interesting things that could be done with the concept of ownership and NFTs and like decentralizing the whole process.
Mm, for sure.
So from that and from this comment, like I had this in my mind. I really wanted to
Mm,
talk about Decentraland, where you
mm,
can legit own virtual pieces of land.
yeah.
And the fun fact, Meta Coven, the person who bought the $69 million five everyday 5,000 people painting, sorry, artwork. So that guy doesn't own a car or doesn't own any real estate in the real world, but he owns tons of digital land in Decentraland.
Yeah.
That blows my mind that he doesn't own any of that in the real world, and he owns a bunch of land in Decentraland, and that
Yeah.
land in Decentraland is probably going to be much more valuable a few years down the line.
True. Bro, I mean, there's this meme of when Lambo, which is a lot of,
Yeah,
it's
got it.
basically traders want to buy Lamborghinis. Lambo
Yeah,
is it's the crypto car, which is basically you make a lot of money and you buy a Lambo. So
yeah,
that's a meme that's been going on for years now. However, today that meme is actually changing. People are
yeah,
like, bro, just buy a fucking Santro, right? They're saying just buy a fucking just rent your house. Why?
yeah.
Because they're saying don't put your crypto earnings into real world assets, because the digital assets that you have in the future are going to be worth a lot more. Technically, a Lambo is a status symbol. It's not really an asset. The price goes down. Land is an asset. Price can go up or down. But they're saying, yo, don't miss out on the big picture here. This is why we're doing this. Digital assets will beat real world assets.
And I think Metacoven's main thesis behind going after that $69 million art piece is we've been in this NFT, he's been in this NFT space for about 10 years now. And like, he didn't want to let this get out of the NFT world, and he wanted the ownership of that artwork within the NFT space so that it doesn't,
Yeah,
dilute in the vision.
true. And dude, I mean, another point we can touch upon is it's almost like a religion or like citizenship, which is people who are really, really into Bitcoin and Ethereum now, they call themselves Bitcoiners over the fact that they are, let's say, Filipino.
Yeah,
Bitcoin is a stronger part of their identity than the country they're in for a lot of them.
true.
So and the reason for that is all their friends, all their collaborators, all their colleagues who are working in Bitcoin or in crypto in general are not in the same country. They're all over the world. So that is super interesting, bro, because it's like there is that shift happening. And I don't know what that looks like. I mean, Balaji speaks a lot about this. Balaji talks specifically about how citizenship is going to change, how companies will compete for, citizens rather than this thing. But yeah, we don't know
Uh,
what's going to happen.
yeah. By the way, have you read Internet of Money?
No, I don't think so.
So there's this OG
Sounds
blockchain
like I
person
should.
called,
It sounds like I
yeah,
should.
you definitely should. I'm reading part two right now, and it's
Yeah.
mind blowing. So there's this OG Bitcoin blockchain person, Andreas. I always butcher his last name, so I'm not even going to try. So he has this collection of books. These are three books: Internet of Money 1, 2, and 3, and this is basically compilation of all the talks he has done in the text format.
Hmm.
So he speaks about this concept that currency will become a language of expression, and
Mm.
you won't define your citizenship by where you are geographically, but by what you're holding and what you believe in. And that is
Mm.
basically the concept behind Ethereans or Bitcoiners.
Yeah. Bro, and so with Decentraland, a lot of people are like, bro, what is it really? Dude, imagine you could actually be a citizen of a virtual space, a citizen of Decentraland. That is the metaverse. And it's not just one metaverse, it's a network of metaverses.
And people are building on top of that as well.
Yeah. So, for example, with the Metacoven example, people who don't know who Metacoven is, like you need to Metacoven and Tubador, two dudes from Tamil Nadu, early in the crypto space. currently living in Singapore, pseudonymous. Their real identity is known, but pseudonymous.
He like revealed his identity yesterday.
Yes. So his real
Metacoven.
identity is known, but he's like, despite that, Metacoven is my alt identity, right? All of this stuff, that's the mask I wear. Um, $69 million, bro. Number one, 69. Number two, they're Indian, bro. Number three, $69 million. Third most expensive artwork in the world.
That is
Right? That's a
crazy.
big change. So their gallery where they store all this artwork, and you can actually right now today you can go and visit their gallery. Right? It's on the browser, but their land on Decentraland will hold their museums. Right? It will hold, for example, their offices. It will hold their event spaces. It might not be VR right now, although some part of it is. It might just be you do it in your browser, but eventually you'll find a way to visit through your phone. And you'll eventually, for people who have VR headset, you'll find a way to visit in VR as well. Right? So it's almost like in the same way that you can take a plane, train, or a bus, you can take your phone, your browser, or VR and still go to this destination.
That is crazy. Think Ready Player One, but real life.
Yes.
I'm sure like somebody is working on that, and like Decentraland also have a killer vision, and they've been working on it for a long time now. It's one of the standout metaverses. There's also one called Crypto Voxels.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
don't know
there are
too
a
much
couple
about
of
it, but
them.
I've seen it. Yeah.
So these are good projects, and like I'm always blown by like a 3D metaverse in the browser. It's
Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah. I would say, I used to be, I didn't believe in Decentraland when it came out. I'll just say that. Because I was like, bro, VR is not here yet. Most people don't have VR. I recently bought a VR headset. Um, so I was like, bro, this is BS. It's a cool concept, but then I realized that it technically doesn't need to be in VR. Like, for example, we spend time on Twitter. Twitter is not a VR place, but we still go to Twitter.
And it has become one of the places like that. Like
Yeah. So like
people
it's
would
like,
ask, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm on Twitter, right?"
yeah, bro, it's like you hang out at home, you hang out
Yeah,
at Starbucks, you hang out on Twitter. It's a place already.
yeah.
So
Interesting concept because, like, if you think about it that way, almost every website or every platform that you go to is a digital space.
yeah,
And imagine digital spaces, but more real in the browser. That is
yeah,
Decentraland, that is CryptoVoxel,
yeah.
that is Metaverse in the browser.
And dude, there's this tweet I saw that blew my mind. It was the fact that today the internet looks like web pages and websites, but it might not look like that in the future. And I was like, oh fuck. Like that is so true. Right? As a UI UX designer, that excites me. But besides that, I'm just like, dude, the internet could look totally different. The internet could look unrecognizable in 2030. Yeah.
Like people like in the 1990s used to connect through this modem where it used to beep twice, and then it would take like 12 to 24 hours for their messages to get along. Like I
Yeah.
can't even imagine internet being like that. It could very much be possible that 30, 20, 30, 35 years down the line, people would be talking about
Yeah.
this internet of web pages and be thinking like, how did people used to deal with this? It's so
Yeah.
primitive.
It is, bro. And bro, I mean, it's very easy to forget, but dude, we're already in the future. Right? We're already in the future. Um, so yeah.
Pretty awesome.
You want
So
to talk about this idea we were discussing on our pre-call about history?
yep, that one.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Set it up for
So,
people watching.
yeah. So, Abhinav also recently had a podcast with Prakhar, and there was a line that he said that was history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And a lot of people seem to be like mind blown by that one. But I found it hard to wrap my head around and like draw analogies from it. So I just wanted him to expand on what that meant.
Mm. So, I didn't, of course, make that up. It's somebody else's quote. Um, But what I'll do is I'll give you all some examples to just think about this concept. Do you remember what the okay, let me ask you this, Manan. When you think about computers, what's the oldest computer you can remember?
The bulky ones. The monitor used to be like this big, in
Yeah,
width.
yeah. Dude, exactly. Right? Huge. Computers are huge. The early ones in the 50s that were the earliest computers were made so that they could calculate where to drop bombs, right? If you look at Raytheon, which is a defense contractor today in the US, the founders of Raytheon were the dudes who were building the technology of the day, right? It's almost like for technology, defense was the biggest use case. And back then, people were like, computers are just for defense. In the same way, today people think crypto is just for money, right? So there were no other use cases that existed back then. But the specific example I want to give you is eventually computers came down in size, right? You could eventually have one on your desk, but it was ugly as fuck. You didn't want it on your desk, but you could have it. And the earliest computers were text based, it was command line. Eventually, 1984, Apple, the whole, I think it was the Macintosh, their first, they were somewhat the first people to do it in the mainstream way. So you could have GUIs, graphical user interfaces. 1984 ad, amazing. I love that ad. That talks about centralization and decentralization the most amazing way possible. So, people, if you want to check that out, Apple 1984 ad. But even then, that graphical user interface, you couldn't see pictures on it. You couldn't load a photo on that screen. It was still, you're still that UI only. Right? You
Right.
can make graphics, but it was not photos. But let's fast forward. Eventually, computers could show photos on them. It could show, you could play music on it, like audio files. You could watch a video on it. Right? So that was the progression. Now, bro, that exact same thing happened with the internet. The
Yep.
very first versions of internet were too slow for photos. It was just text based, completely text. Do you remember there was this time when, actually, I'm not sure if you'll remember this, but there's this time when if you're on a website and there's a photo, it loads like this.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It's like it's printing out. It's printing on your page, on your screen. Today, you don't see that at all. Maybe sometimes, but so internet as well. It was text, then it was pictures, then you could play music on the internet, then you could do videos, right? So it's these primitive forms: text, sound, pictures, videos, which is pictures with sound. Now, bro, that exact same thing has happened so many times with computers, with the internet, with smartphones. The first smartphones were SMS based. It was just text. Right? You couldn't load a picture on it. You could have a UI, a graphical user interface eventually, but no pictures. And then the first Nokia said, "Bro, we have a fucking camera in this," and now you can browse your photos. Um, you don't need a physical photo album. And then they said you can take videos. Then they said you can play games. And so this is an example of history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It's the same
Right.
pattern that's playing out. And even today with crypto, in some ways we're seeing that, which is the earliest cryptos had nothing to do with art. I'm not saying they were text based or anything, but it was not visual.
Yeah.
Right now, the part we're in crypto is it's very visual. Right? The best thing that's come out of NFTs is now there's art on our Twitter timelines 24/7. Right? There's looping GIFs, there's 3D work, there's amazing stuff. But dude,
There's a lot of hidden gems that have come out, and like a lot of
yeah,
artists have like doubled down on this because they now see a way through which they can monetize, which wasn't possible.
yeah, dude. So it's almost like if history doesn't repeat, if history rhymes, what does that look like? Nobody knows, but the patterns are already there because this has happened before. And
Right.
maybe it's happened before computers as well, technically. Right? The printing press, for example, the printing press changed the world because before that, writing books was you had to do it by hand. So the number of books that existed in the world were very few because the proof of work to do it was really high.
Right.
And then once that happened, once you could print, eventually it got to a point where people could distribute their own books. So, and then before the printing press, I'm sure this has existed, right? This rhyming concept goes forward in time, but it seems to go backward in time as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And like the key point that if I had to conclude out of it, for every of the like all of these technologies, the UX got better over time. And like initially, all of them were almost just for the nerds, and then UX hit a critical mass, after which it reached mass adoption. Like it started being
Mm,
adopted by a lot of people. So that is something I wanted to talk about, that with crypto, what are the major like UX blockers that you see which stop people from like trusting the blockchain or adopting crypto in general as normal users?
got it. I would say the biggest one is lack of patterns, right? Lack of repeating recognizable patterns. Now, I'll give you a very simple example of that. Your parents, the first time they used WhatsApp, what did they think about WhatsApp? So they opened WhatsApp,
Yeah,
went through that OTP onboarding, whatever, and then they could see their contacts on the screen.
right,
That was probably I don't know this, but the first time for a lot of them that they saw a list on a screen, a list of things.
right,
They know a list exists. A list is a pattern because they make lists in real life. But for a lot of them, it was the first time they saw a list that pattern on a screen, which is why it was easy for them to pick up in some ways. They clicked it, they saw it, and they're like, oh, okay, that's how it works. Now, these kind of patterns,
right.
um, we call them design patterns. They exist in the world. For example, right now you're watching this on YouTube in a player, right? You have a player and it's playing the YouTube video. The same player is
Yeah,
a pattern that you'll also see on Twitter in slightly different form. The UI also might change. Or the idea of
but it's the
stories,
same.
same pattern, right? Stories, Instagram was the first to start it. I mean, sorry, Snapchat was the first to start it,
Snapchat.
right? But Snapchat did it. It was so good. Facebook added it to every single product, right? That's how
Right.
powerful it was as a pattern. So with crypto, I think we're in a stage where most people don't have these patterns yet. So their first interaction might be an exchange, like they buy for for Indian folks who are listening, WazirX. That's an exchange where you can buy crypto in a very simple way. You can pay with UPI. WazirX, the pattern that people see when they come across this is the stock market. They're like, oh, it's like the stock market. However, when they use something like MetaMask, there's no pattern for it. There's nothing.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's something similar that exists, but most people are confused because they're not able to match it to a pattern that they're familiar with. So, as designers, creators, developers in the blockchain space, we have to really figure these patterns out. Like, we are the early adopters. We need to figure out what are these patterns that we can make that other people can use. So, it's almost like we're not, and it's already happening. A lot of technologies, if one project does it and it seems to be working, other projects will pick it up.
So, like MetaMask's UI, a lot of other browser-based wallets for other chains have a super similar UI to MetaMask, because it is a
Yeah.
pattern that MetaMask created, and now other people
Mm.
are picking up on that.
Mm. So, the pattern problem is the biggest thing right now. People don't have those, but it's slowly, with NFTs, one thing I also like is it becomes accessible. I mean, of course, the gas fees is really high right now, but we'll see more of these. And people will, by curiosity, get into it. They'll figure out MetaMask or whatever else. And then they'll be like, now that I understand this, what else? What else? And it keeps building,
Yeah.
right? Curiosity will drive this field forward.
True. So from your perspective, you're that with the NFT wave, it's great that we have this like boom of art pieces and all of that. But for me, like the core thing with the NFT wave, apart from the value of NFTs or what they bring to the table, I'm super happy that NFT has intrigued like thousands of young builders to get into blockchain and start building on the blockchain. Like this Thursday, I had another live with Miguel. He's like a 19-year-old from Spain who's super into building indie products. and he got into NFTs with the blockchain hype, and he has already built 2 side projects on it.
Mm.
So that is very interesting to me that people are getting into this blockchain space and building for it just because NFTs intrigue them. Because I honestly have fell in love with the technology. I love it. So it's always
Yeah,
like a happy moment for me to see when people get into building for the blockchain.
yeah. I'll give you one example of history rhyming for me. I've
Yeah.
What I'm feeling right now with NFTs is exactly what I felt with the App Store in 2010, 11 kind of thing. And back then, of course, I couldn't build apps because college, I was in
Right.
computer science and I was like, fuck, then I'm never going to touch apps in the entire syllabus for these 4 years. But I knew design and I was figuring design out. Back then, dude, the early apps, like imagine being one of the first few apps on the App Store, made a ton of money, right? You had fart apps that were making a ton of money. And think of
Yeah.
those almost like NFT projects. There were so many of them. It was an explosion. And me,
Uh, did you see Varun's tweet? The OG NFT, the red icon.
the red button, yeah.
So
Yeah,
there was this app for like $999, which had zero utility, but they were like, this is not for everybody, but if you have this on your phone, you can show it to people and flex your wealth.
yeah. The button is literally an app called I'm Rich, which costs 1,000. Yeah. So
Yeah.
back then, I was super young builder. Right? I was maybe 19 or 20 at the time.
Hmm.
And it's like when there's a gold rush, it's not just the people who are mining the gold that make the money. It's the people who are making the shovels and axes for it, right? The
Right.
pickaxe to break this thing and mine it. And it's not just the people who make pickaxes, also the people who make fucking jeans. Like Levi's was born in the California gold rush because they made workwear for these miners who were rushing to California. Right. So
That
back
is
then for me, I was a designer. I couldn't make apps by myself, but I realized I have a valuable skill. I realized that so many people in the US, most of my clients, I got them through Upwork. Back then it was called Odesk. Were US people. It was like, the kind of projects I worked on, it was some dude who was a fitness trainer in the US. And he's like, dude, I want to build my own fitness app. With my clients, they already send me pictures of my progress. They're tracking their weight, they're tracking their, BMI and everything. He was like, I'll make an app where I have a feed where all my clients can see each other's progress. So it was everyday people like you and me who were like, let's do this. So there were people who were doing, of course, fart apps, but there were people who were doing, like, hey, can we book? Back then, one of probably my first or second app that I ever designed. It was this dude in Canada who was like, I want to book cleaning services through my app. So it was called the Tidy app, and you could book a maid. Right? He or she would come to your house. While booking, you can say, okay, these many rooms, this is what I have. Enter your credit card, and it gets done. Now,
right.
bro, most of those apps are dead today. Most of those apps don't exist. All this work that I've done is disappeared forever. I mean, I have the PSDs and the images, but it's gone forever. But that was an amazing learning experience for me. And I think for a lot of young builders today, that same thing that happened, they're feeling a similar way with NFTs. Yeah.
Right. So, on your second Twitter account, Abnux2, you started talking about ephemera.
Mm,
So, I want you to like just talk about in brief, like what do you mean by that, and where are you heading with it?
got it. So, I mean, I quickly posted in the chat also for people who missed the word. Ephemera, to me, let me start with a story or an example first. I want to ask you, Manan, your last week on Twitter, how has it felt? Like, what have you been seeing? How did it feel overall?
Super quick. That's the description of
Yeah.
my previous week. There was so much going on that it felt like time just flew by.
Can you tell me some things that were going on for you on your feed?
YouTube live. So like I had a couple of them planned this week,
Hmm.
and there was this new NFT project that I was also thinking of, and writing a
Hmm.
couple of threads like based on what I was going to talk about in the other stream.
Hmm.
So all of that.
Awesome. The reason I asked is because it's a unique moment in time, right? This week that we've just had on Twitter, it's going to be next week is going to be totally different for you. The week after that is going to be totally different. It'll be similar, it might rhyme, but it's a experience that you went through, right? And I don't just mean Twitter. For people who are not on Twitter and they're like, fuck, I missed out. It's not just Twitter. Think about your last week. What did you do? Right? What were you feeling? What were the things you did? How did they make you feel? Who were the people you spoke to? It's never going to repeat again, right? You're never going to do the same things, talk to the same people, um, feel the exact set of emotions. Next week is going to be different. And then this keeps going on for the rest of your life.
Right.
So the way I'm thinking about it is today in the software stack that we talk about, right? Computer engineers, you very familiar with this. But to give a simple example for non-engineers, when we say full stack developer, for example, we're talking about somebody who works at each level of the stack. However, what this stack is, of course, the OSI model, you might have learned that in your first week of computer science. Um, it basically means that all technology we use today is a bunch of layers, right?
Right.
This is the stack. At the very bottom, you have zeros and ones. That's your, let's say it's your computer we're talking about, your zeros and ones. Then you have your system software, you have your OS. Um, or if it's the internet we're talking about, you have a website, you have the servers that are running it, you have databases, you have your back end, you have your processing. You've then got your front end, which is your front end code. You've got your design, which is another layer, which is how people are interacting with the front end. And so far, these are the layers, and we've been building them up over time, right? If you're a programmer 30 years ago, you'd be working at this layer, right?
Yeah.
Because these layers didn't exist. You'd be working at the zeros and ones layer. Today, as a programmer, your first ever this thing, you might directly jump into front end. But and you
Right.
don't technically you don't need to know how the zeros and ones work. It's useful, but you don't need to know it. And that concept is called abstraction. These abstractions happen such that people who are building at this layer, all of this is abstracted for them. It's just APIs and connections. So you don't need to actually understand. You just need to know what the endpoints are, for example. So
Right.
that's the stack. And that's how all of products today, how all computer science, that's the model you can think about. Um, if you're a React developer, you're this, that, you fit somewhere in the stack, right? If you're an Angular developer, you understand what part of the stack Angular is in. If you're a designer, the stack that we work on is typically the higher levels. So we work on the part where we're talking about the flows. We're talking
Right.
about how do people interact with it. What are the actions they can do? Right now, you're on YouTube. Hit the like button. I want you to hit it. I'm making an example. Hit the subscribe button. What you're doing is you're hitting the UI. This action is in the front end. These buttons exist. When you click it, it sends something to the back end saying update the likes for this person. And that's the whole stack.
Right.
What I'm thinking about is what's another level on top of it. Now that we have all of this, what's the next level going to be? And the term I have right now is ephemera. If you can quickly Google this for everybody, actually everybody on right now, open a new tab and Google it. What it basically means is ephemeral means something that's here for a while but is not going to be there later. Can you just read it out, Manan? What's the exact
So
definition?
things that exist or are used or enjoyed only for a short time.
Yes. So they exist for a short time. So that way, it's like our experience with Twitter lasted for a short time. Or a simple example of this is actually Snapchat. You
Right.
send an image, it lasts for 10 seconds and then it's gone. Where did the image go? It's gone. It's not, it might be somewhere in the stack, but you can't see it anymore. But it exists in your head. You still
Right.
remember this image was sent. So that is ephemera, right? This image doesn't exist on the software layer, but exists in our minds. It exists in the ephemeral layer.
Right.
So I don't know what it fully means, right? But my first tweet around this was, back then, I mean, earlier we had hardware and software. Those were the distinctions we made. You're a hardware guy or a software guy. Today it's almost like we have software and design almost. There are these two types of roles. Within design, we have research, UX research. We have visual design, motion design. I'm almost thinking like ephemera might be another layer. So you have hardware, software, and ephemera. Ephemera is almost like what happens on these platforms. And maybe it ties into communities, maybe it ties into network effects. But yeah, that's just a word I'm using right now.
That's an interesting concept. Like you're basically ideating on what would be the next layer on top of design and software, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Like how do you craft these experiences, the next
Yeah.
level of these experiences, basically.
Yeah. And dude, the biggest companies in the world, the way they started was they owned one part of the stack. Today, if you
Yeah.
think about companies like Sun Microsystems, the OGs in the space, people like Vinod Khosla, the kind of stuff they're working on before, if they didn't build that, we wouldn't be here today. Because they
Right.
built, not just them, the people before them as well. They built some of the core parts of the stack.
Right.
And once they did that as an abstraction, they became rich, and the next set of companies were born. AWS today, for example, you don't need to set your own servers up. You can just
Right.
use it as a reliable abstraction. Amazon says, we'll figure this out for you. So, that's the nature. Abstraction is, when we hear about abstraction in our computer science classes, I don't understand. When I first heard about abstraction in ICSE 9th standard or 10th standard, actually, when we started Java.
Yeah.
Only today do I understand how deep that concept is.
It's a lot to grasp your head around. Like when you're taught of it, you're just thinking about how do I make my code abstractive or like abstract out these layers. But it runs deeper. It runs at every level, almost like a fractal.
Yeah, like a fractal, definitely.
That is an interesting concept. Like that'll take a lot of time to like wrap my head around ephemera. Like what would
Yeah,
experiences look like? Maybe it will be in the VR. Maybe it will
yeah,
exactly be like Ready Player One.
yeah,
Who knows what it'll turn into?
for sure, for sure.
Cool. So another topic that I really want to touch upon is that obviously all of this blockchain, NFTs, cryptocurrencies, all of this has created an alternate economy on the internet,
Mm.
right? But how, as a creative or as a developer, how would you suggest somebody to leverage this economy in their favor? How do they basically get started with it? A more like distilled version of this question would be someone who recently got fascinated by the idea of NFTs. How should they start working with them? So I'm like
Mm.
abstracting out this question to blockchain as the whole.
Got it. Can you just leave the question on screen? I'll
Sure.
just want to see it.
Just a second.
So I would say the very first thing is that you are here right now. You're here right now, which means you're interested in this space. You've heard about NFTs. Most of the world today, the word NFT doesn't exist in their dictionary yet.
Right.
The fact that you're here, you're already ahead. I'll just say that. What's next? At this point, if you don't understand the space, you have to be totally open about it. I'm very open about it. I don't understand the space completely. I have some understanding of it, but I'm not going to pretend that my understanding is the full understanding. It's some part of it. There's some things that I don't realize yet, something that I'm not seeing, or it hasn't clicked in my mind, basically. And that's normal. Anytime you're learning a new skill, it happens. The first thing to do is to learn. And by learn, I don't mean, of course, you can actually watch some YouTube videos. Like there's this one, I think I tweeted this, but I don't remember. There's MIT courseware for economy of blockchain or something.
Yeah.
Right. So those are some traditional sources that are really good. Do the people there teaching that course fucking insane, right? So I know I like to shit on MOOCs sometimes, but the content is really good. right? So
Right.
definitely, if you have a shot, do watch it. Besides that, the point I'm trying to make though is learning doesn't happen in one way. Learning happens in different ways for different people. I would say follow my account, Abnux2, and maybe you can post a link in the chat,
Sure.
Manan. But the main reason I say that is I am also myself learning in public. So anytime I learn something new, I just put it out. I just share it, right? And it's not just me who's doing this. There's a lot of people right now who are understanding the space who are doing that on Twitter.
Sorry, I
So
changed.
no worries. So right now is the time when you're still early, and you should use this time to understand better. You're already doing that by being here on this live stream or watching the session replay of this. But don't be like, bro, fuck, I have to mine my first NFT in this weekend, or I'm not gonna make it. That's not. It's not like, chill out. It's okay. We're still very very early. Even if you
Right.
invest in NFTs or crypto, 5 years later you'll still be early. I can't guarantee that for sure, but that's my guess.
That's the likelihood, basically.
Yes. So, dude, I would say first step is forget about, oh fuck, I need to NFT mine right now. I need to do this. Just understand the space. Understand the space. Make your own notes, right? A lot of my notes are private. A lot of them I'm sharing them on Twitter, and it's almost like the connections. You want to start making the connections in your mind. Yesterday, on the so we had a live session yesterday for the cohort for 10K
Hmm.
designers, and uh, my partner who teaches along with me, Janil, he had this interesting idea. He said, which is, when we first come across an idea, a seed is planted in our head. So our mind is like this fertile soil that extends far far beyond. Now when we first think of an idea, a seed is planted, but that seed is still a seed, right? So for example, today, from today's session, you might some seeds might have been planted, or
Right.
maybe not, maybe not yet. But every time you hear an idea, a seed is planted, and every time you hear the idea for the second time, you're adding water on those seeds, so it grows a little bit. It
Right.
grows a little bit more, and then over time, you have this garden in your head of ideas. Some of them you've understood them so well that they're trees. Others are still saplings, right? So it's almost like right now, what you want to do is you want to plant these seeds, which is by watching this content, figuring out what the people who are ahead right now. I'm not saying I'm ahead. There's so many people ahead of me right now, but I'm just trying to learn from them. The seeds are being planted, and over time these patterns start emerging. It's like the growth will happen. It just, once you understand, right? That's the understanding phase. After that, it's the execution phase. Once you understand, you're like, bro, like, okay, I'm convinced, I'm totally in, bro. Like, when you're like, this is the most interesting thing that I've ever come across, you will feel that at some point, and you have to then pull the trigger. You have to be like, okay, I'm going to dedicate a year of my life to working at a startup where I'm doing this. You can learn from them, or doing something by yourself, or doing it with a community. You might have a community online. You might have a couple Discord servers you're hanging out, and do it together. um, and just keep doing that. I would say, it's a game of momentum. Even if in a week you make very little progress, it's okay. You have another week ahead. Just keep going.
That's like a very nice advice that I always have, that the speed doesn't matter unless you're in the right direction, because at one point you will pick
Mm.
up momentum. The direction needs to be right.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. And like, to add on to that, when you gain a basic understanding, then what you execute on is based on what you're more interested in. So like, if you're a creative, if you're like a motion graphics designer, then you might mint an NFT at a marketplace that people could buy, or like you might mint a collection. If you're a developer, you could come up with an interesting application of NFTs and code it out and collaborate with people on that project. So like, the execution completely depends on what your skill set is, basically. There's something for almost everybody in the NFT space.
Yeah, you don't need to be a developer, is something I'll also say. You can be a designer, but
Yeah.
you don't even need to be a designer. You can also just be a community person, right? Every single blockchain on forget blockchain, every single project out there today, very community based. You
Right.
hang out in those discords long enough, they will say, bro, you understand this better than any full-time employee we could hire. Why don't you take on this responsibility? And now you will get paid in real money, but also a little bit in crypto. Right? That's how the early developers of Ethereum and all these guys, that's how they started as part-time contributors towards the thing. Eventually, when it made sense, they were like, I'm going to quit my job or I'm going to go full on in this.
Yeah. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
let's just I think we have covered almost everything that we wanted to about NFTs, right? Is there anything we
Awesome.
are missing on?
Um, let's do 10 minutes of questions, 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
And then I think we can wrap up.
Cool. So let us know if you have any questions. Just put them in the chat and we'll pick them up. And while the questions roll in, I had a question of my own, a little off topic around cohort based courses.
Yeah.
So, I was super into creating content before I got a little busy with work and college. So, with cohort based courses and with teaching for so long and creating content, what's the number one advice you would give to somebody who's looking to get started in that arena?
Started as a to get better as a learner or as an educator?
As a creator and an educator.
Got it. My number one advice would be you need to put in your proof of work. One way I'll say that is in the same similar example as NFTs, you can't just, if you're like, bro, cohort based courses are so cool, right? You might be feeling a similar feeling with CVCs. You can't directly make a CVC in the same way that you
Right.
can't directly mint an NFT. You have to understand the space first. But once you do, I would say cohort based courses, proof of work is important. What that means is if you want to, for example, in the future, do something around crypto, you want to do something around design, you want to do something around XYZ topic that you think you're really into, you have to do the proof of work related to that topic. So for me, what that was is I started with YouTube, my YouTube channel, right? Not Abnux 2, but Abnux 1, like just Abnux.
Yeah.
So when I started that, I was just making free videos. I was posting all of these out. And I was able to get an idea of what people wanted, which is, did they want content around this? What were the problems they were running into? All of these things that I'm saying today, the reason I can say that, this is how learning works, um, this is how you should learn, this the seeds idea and all of that, I didn't have it on day one. But today, now I'm like, okay, it all starts connecting. So that was a tangent, but the answer is if you want to get into CVCs, start putting out free content. Start building that community before you build the product.
Right.
It makes things so much easier, which is if you've done the community right, it's almost like the community will ask you. It's not even that you're trying to sell them something. They will ask you, they'll be like, please, Manan, can you make something which is a course on this? Because we understand your teaching style and we want to learn it from you. They'll be like, bro, like, and at that point you have options now. You can get into it. So I'd say
Started sort of happening right before I went light on content.
oh yeah.
Because initially I was mostly doing it on Instagram and side by side YouTube. But then when I started working, I realized, and when I got on Twitter, I realized Instagram's tech community is not it. Twitter and YouTube are the places to be at. And once I broke momentum, I haven't really got back to it fully since then.
And
So
that's also fine. I would say my Instagram account, there have been months where I don't post anything. My Twitter, my YouTube, man, my Abnox YouTube. My last video was like I don't know, 1.5 months ago, right? In YouTube time, that's like 10 years. So it's okay. That's fine. Yeah.
So one of the hot questions that Vedant has been dying to ask you, he's asked thrice or four. You got to answer this.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell people what this is a little bit, not fully. We're building or let me not say building we have started building a 10K designers metaverse, right? It's not technically crypto yet. It's not even not even a full project you can experience. But we've started moving on that direction. So Vedant's helped early on with that. But yeah, that's all I'll say. Soon is the answer.
Super waiting for that. Like that is interesting. Like how could you like even think of that? A metaverse for a cohort-based course.
Yeah,
But I know like when I say 10K designers is a cohort-based course, I'm oversimplifying because it's much more than just that. But at its core, right? That's the core offering
it's
right
a
now.
that's true. The community is at the core of it. Yeah.
Right. So there's another question. I don't have a
Okay.
recognized brand name, a blue tick, or art would get unnoticed in NFT space. How can you make sure early adopters could engage with this platform to build a brand?
Okay. Just leave up the question. Um,
Yep.
so, dude, Sushrit, I have good news and bad news for you. The Actually, I don't know which is good and which is bad. Okay, I'll just say it. You said you don't have a recognized brand name, and your art would get unnoticed in the NFT space. Technically, bro, your art would also get unnoticed in the non-NFT space, which is in the real world, right? Who wants to buy art from somebody who doesn't have a recognized brand name, right? So not just NFTs. Think about that for a sec. If any of you have been to Goa recently or anytime, you see how there's a lot of, for example, Art Juna. There's this cafe, Art Juna. There's a bunch of places. They always have art on display, and
Okay.
usually artists are trying to sell this art. But then their goal is not to sell it. It's mostly that I'm anyway practicing my art. Might as well put some of these pieces up in this Arjuna, which is a cafe where a lot of people come, Indians, foreigners, tourists, travelers, nomads. They're like, if they see it, maybe some of it gets bought. But what's their goal? Their goal is not really to sell it. It's just that I'm practicing and I'll put some of this out. So it's the same thing with the NFT space, which is nobody starts out with a recognized brand name. Nobody. They build it up over time. So think about how can you do that? And for NFTs, the way to do this right now is Twitter, which is now with my second account, I'm mostly following just NFT people. And I see that the people who are doing really well are the people who care about stuff. Like the artists that are not doing well are the ones that come to Twitter only when they want to sell.
Yep.
They're like, here's the link. I've just minted. Right? That's all they do on Twitter. They don't reply to anyone. They don't follow anyone. They just post their stuff. The artists who are doing well are the ones who are talking to people. They're making new friends, right? They're following people, replying to their this thing, getting in the DMs, having a conversation, right? That's technically how you build a community. But in the art world, that is how artists, that's the relationship between artists and collectors as well. Over time, as you keep doing your art, you're going to build up a base of collectors. These are people who are like, this guy's almost a friend to me, this artist. Whenever they
Right.
do stuff, I think about, do I want to buy this? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no. But you now have this collector base. These are almost like your collaborators in some way. They are funding you. An Indian example of this would be Maharajas back in the day were patrons of art, right? They would support artists, not just in India, but everywhere, like Rajas in general, kings. So today, man, the good news, the bad news is that, bro, it exists, even in the real world. The good news is that nobody has 100% figured it out. So you are still early. So you need to do your experiments, see what works, and you will get it. You'll eventually get it.
Cool. So that was a pretty great answer because that goes with everything that has got to do with your personal brand that you got to put in the reps and put out the stuff and like genuinely work on it because
Mm,
you can't just expect to go out there and offer something and like people will take it up. Like similar is a case with products as well, right? You got to show them
yeah,
like you can't just out of the blue come and say like we've built this, come pay us money for this. There
yeah.
has to be something behind it, and Daksh has also like put this in a great way. I feel that best NFTs have a story behind them, a relation to the community similar to the Mona Lisa. The value of material is nothing, the value of the story is millions. So that is the thing with your personal brand as well, that behind most NFTs that the artists have minted, the story behind it is their journey through which they got better at their craft, right?
Yes.
And if you're doing that in public, then it just ramps up to creating a great personal brand as well for you. And like more than personal brand, I think putting out your work helps you like get connected to very interesting people, and
Mm.
connected not just from a transactional sense, but from like a genuine point of curiosity, that you can talk about crazy shit and like vibe together.
Yes. Yes. For sure. So, Manan, what I'll do is I think we can probably wrap it up here. I want to end
Yeah,
with one quote, right? This
sure.
is one of my favorite quotes. Just to sort of wrap up the discussion, but also give you all something to think about. This quote is by Terence McKenna. If you don't know who Terence McKenna is, interesting dude. That's all I'll say. But the quote goes, what a gene is to biology, a meme is to ideology. Madonna is a meme. Catholicism is a meme. Marxism is a meme. Yellow sweaters are a meme. Rainbow colored dreadlocks are a meme. Launch your meme boldly and see if it will replicate, just like genes replicate and infect and move into the organism of society. And believing as I do that society operates on a kind of biological economy, then I believe these memes are the key to societal evolution.
That's a beautiful quote, and that's a beautiful way to look at it. Everything is a meme. Every cultural phenomenon is a meme. Awesome. So I think that's it for today. And thanks a lot for doing this. And thanks for taking out the
Yeah, man.
time. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I'm sure the people watching did as well. So
Mm.
bye, guys. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Abhinav, for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for calling me here. Love having these conversations.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.